Understanding and forgiveness are gifts that we can give to ourselves and each other. Join us for this conversation about Gene Key 4, interwoven with the wisdom of Sabian Symbols, Leo 20 through 25. Welcome to the Free to Be Free portal. We're so glad you joined us. I'm Julia Ananda, your host, and I'm here with mystic and astrologer Margaret Miller. Margaret, this is going to be a fascinating discussion.
Thanks, Julia. So good to be here. And yeah, I'm excited to dive into this. It's a really, really powerful energy that we're moving through. This sun is moving now through Gene Key 4 again, which is the shadow of intolerance, the gift of understanding, and the city of forgiveness. And so, just like so many of these shadow frequencies, the shadow of intolerance is one that is so uh, prevalent, right, in our lives and in our world. And we might think of ourselves a lot of times. I think we do think of ourselves as I'm not an intolerant person. I'm quite tolerant. In fact, I I do this all the time with myself. And then I realize, it's really good to realize the areas where we are intolerant. And I was laughing as I was looking at the Gene Keys book, and how Richard Rudd talks about that we're even intolerant of our own minds. Like when we sit to meditate, we can't even sit, for a period of time without getting irritated with our own thought processes, right? And so that kind of automatically brings me to how intolerance kind of works, and or how it comes about. And and so it really is the gifts and the shadows and the cities are all interconnected in this way. And this part of us that has a reaction to something, that would then lead to intolerance, is we have a reaction, and we need to understand. We want understanding, but we don't really know how to get it. And so we look for a reason for why it happened. We look for a reason, and we use our reasoning or in our logic, right, to try and map that out. Because if we have a reason, then we can justify our feeling of whatever our reaction of anger, or sadness, or dismay, or shock, or whatever it is. We can justify that, and we'll have somebody to point the finger at and someone to blame. And so once we find that reason, and our minds are great at finding a reason, we can find a reason for anything. Right? Then we're locked in. We're locked into that intolerance. And if instead we instead of looking for a reason, we just get curious. We just use curiosity and go, I wonder what that was about. I wonder why that happened that way. I wonder why this person said this or did that, or are doing this. And that opens up a space, right? That opens up a space that searching for a reason does not. Because because searching for a reason is a dead end. It ends at intolerance, right? But having curiosity and wondering why opens this opportunity for us to do what you reminded me of earlier, Julia, when we were talking. It opens up the possibility for us to put ourselves in the other person's shoes, right? And it opens up that possibility for us to wonder what they were feeling or what they were thinking or what they were going through in their own lives that caused, this series of events to happen. And so that reaction then can turn into a response that has empathy, that has understanding. Because once we do that, I'm certain that all of us have at some point been in that place where we did put ourselves in the other person's shoes, or we had something similar happen to us and saw ourselves having the same reaction, having the same response. And so we get to see ourselves in that other person, and we get to feel what they felt, right? And then realize that we have this opportunity to respond differently. And then, before I even get into the siddhi of forgiveness, I want to go right into the Sabian symbols, because I just got reminded of the of several of the Sabian symbols, which really do talk about understanding, and they talk about that search for understanding. And so Leo 20 is the first one that we'll start with, and it's Native Americans perform a ritual to the sun. This is a very powerful symbol, and about really connecting ourselves with nature and with remembering the sacredness and honoring where our source of life comes from. Nothing would exist here without the the light of the sun. And in these rituals, many of especially the Native American rituals to the sun, there is um, the act of gazing. You're not gazing directly at the sun, obviously, but gazing at the sun and receiving the light and the wisdom and the understanding, because understanding is light, the light of understanding, right? And and that and oftentimes they do have the element of looking for forgiveness, or cultivating that as well. And so this symbol is really powerful in terms of it showing us that understanding is not a mental process. It's not necessarily just an emotional process either. It's a heart process. It's a process that comes only through light and love, right? It's such a beautiful, to me, it's such a beautiful symbol. It's very personally involved in my own spiritual practices. So it's a uh, connecting ourselves to the source of light, connecting ourselves to the source of wisdom, and to allow that light of understanding to come into our hearts, and then to respond. And we will respond differently. We do respond differently when we come from, when we're coming from our hearts, when our heart and our mind are in alignment and connecting, then we will act in a way that is more than tolerance. It's a recognition of our connectedness to each other, and that I'm no different from you. And I mean, in the essence of who we are. So then Leo 21 Intoxicated chickens dizzily flap their wings, trying to fly. Okay, so this one is talking about the not getting. It's talking about avoiding spiritual confusion. Like when we are on the spiritual path, when we're searching for answers, when we're searching for our connection to source, there are powerful things that happen, and there's steps that have to be taken. Sometimes we jump into things, into a spiritual path or into a ceremony or into whatever it is, and we are given these great gifts, but we don't know how to use them. Like our spiritual awakening gives us wings, but if we don't know how to use them, we can flap around like intoxicated chickens, and so this it's learning how to utilize our energies. And this is, I think by now people probably know this is one of my favorite topics, is how to become the stewards of our own energy, right? And when and it's so exciting, right? It's so exciting to when we get some glimpse of spiritual understanding that we can uh, get out of balance, right, and become sort of intoxicated with it and get ungrounded. And so really seeking for that understanding, and I think also having patience uh, with whatever we're going through, and knowing that we're always sort of at the beginning of this, knowing that we're always at the beginning of our understanding, and that we can I'm going to move on to the next symbol because it kind of it does go in this order and this flow that's very, very beautiful. Leo 22, a carrier pigeon is fulfilling its mission. So once we come into that balance and we learn how we do the practices or follow the pathway that allows us to become proficient at flying, right, at being in these higher states. We've done the spiritual muscle building that allows us to instead of just reacting, instead of just that we do open ourselves up to that possibility of understanding through our heart, through our heart-centered awareness, through the light of understanding that's always flowing to us. Okay, then we can fulfill our mission, a carrier pigeon fulfilling its mission. Then we can hit the mark, right? Then we have the wisdom that will that that we can then pass on the message, right? So it's a beautiful symbol as well. Okay, a bareback rider displays her dangerous skill. So I like this symbol because it's really about the 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 training and the audacity and the perseverance that is required to navigate and to do something as dangerous as forgiving, right? To do something as dangerous because it feels dangerous. Like if I let go of this thing that I've been intolerant of for this long, what does it mean? What does it mean about me? What does it mean about the other person? What does it mean about life, right? And but having the skills and the practice to be able to do these magnificent feats, right? Which all of us have this capacity to do the things that feel quite dangerous to us, and we're at that place, in society, in the world, in the collective consciousness, to let go of the victim consciousness, right? What if I were to not be a victim at all to anything? What if I were to be responsible for what happens in my life and therefore what happens in the world? What if all of us were responsible, right? What if and that was okay? You know, um, this is a beautiful symbol also, because the horse is this powerful symbology in itself, the strength and the power and the grace, and the two of them working together, they both developed this skill and relationship in order to be able to perform this incredible act, right? And so they have to come into this symbiosis that is based in understanding, based in true understanding of each other, and what they're trying to accomplish, right? So I just love that symbol. Leo 24, totally concentrated upon inner spiritual attainment. A man completely neglects his outward appearance, his physical appearance, right? So this man in deep contemplation, deep meditation, has completely forgotten or completely remembered, right? And is, in that search for understanding, in that seeking for enlightenment. All else has fallen away, and there is this complete acceptance of every moment as it is. And I would imagine that the thoughts are gone at that point, right? There's not using, he's not intolerant of his own self, and he's not intolerant of his discomfort, right? Because we're intolerant of temperature changes. We're intolerant of, we're intolerant of a lot of things, and so anyway, that's just a beautiful demonstration of that in our search for understanding. Leo 25, a large camel is seen crossing a vast and forbidding desert. So this is a symbol, of course, of self-sufficiency. The camel carries its water in its hump, and it's able to cross incredible distances where there is no water. And so it reminds us of the powerful tool of gaining self-sufficiency and gaining self-control and self-assurance. And it leads me right back into the idea of stewardship of our own energy, because when we're able to, instead of having that reaction or noticing when we have an intolerant reaction, seeking for understanding, right? Seeking for understanding and seeking for that feeling of what the other person, or what else might be happening there that we weren't necessarily aware of, right? Then we come into this incredible energy of our heart, of the understanding it's just available to us. The light of understanding is just available to us. And then that understanding leads powerfully to forgiveness, because as you said in the very beginning, it is this gift. Understanding is a gift that's given to us, that then, when we understand where somebody's coming from, we can give them the gift of understanding as well, right? And we give ourselves that gift or it's given to us, and then we can then give that gift to another. And when we truly understand, then we can move that next step farther into forgiveness. And when we do that, we lift the burden off of another, or lift the burden off of ourselves. Every spiritual philosophy, every religion has a teaching around forgiveness, right? And forgiveness, the word itself does have give in it, to give forth, to give away, right? To let go of, to release a burden, to release a debt, to release something, to let go of it, to give it over. And the beauty of some of them, in the Buddhist tradition, it's about uh, restoring ourselves. And for example, in a lot of the Native American traditions, forgiveness is associated with water, okay, with purification, because the energy of resentment or intolerance uh, is poisonous, is toxic, and and you're and in order to restore harmony and balance within the community, no one can be harboring that. Right? Nobody can be harboring intolerance. And so the water is used for purification as a symbol of washing away or letting go of. And and many, in the Hebrew definition of forgiveness, in the Buddhist, it's about restoring relationship. It's you can, and restoring harmony. And so it's an act that you take, and it's, you know, restoring harmony in the self as well as in the other. And it is difficult, it only can come when the light of understanding has come into you, right? Because we can't, and because we think of, I can that can never be forgiven, that's unforgivable, right? Well, nothing is unforgivable if we're all one, right? Because it's all ourselves. And so it's a powerful topic that I'm dancing dangerously around right now. But the idea that forgiveness has the power to lift the burden off of ourselves, to lift the burden off of another, and to restore harmony in the system, in the whole community, in the whole system. And that, and Richard Rudd, you were talking about earlier, Julia, in our conversation before, talking about the sort of the last sentences in his in the Gene Keys book on this Gene Key 4 have to do with forgiveness sort of dissolving the mind ultimately, because forgiveness doesn't require a reason. It doesn't require us to determine who's right and who's wrong. It doesn't require us to even be seeking for knowledge anymore. It causes us to become part of the other, to be part of the whole. Ultimately, we recognize that. And anyone who has truly forgiven doesn't need to worry about forgiving and forgetting, or um, you know, making it. I'm trying to remember the word. That's okay. Making You don't have to make it right. You're not excusing, right? When you're forgiving. That was another one of the definitions that I I ran into was that when we truly forgive, it's voluntary and it's complete. It's a giving away. And there doesn't have to be it's not about making excuses. It's not about who did what. It's about we're all in this together. And the only way to restore harmony is for me to let go of this burden that I'm carrying of intolerance towards you.
So forgiveness is like a release.
Yeah,
It's a giving, letting go of.
yeah.
Yeah. You talked about in the Leo 23 Sabian symbol of the bareback rider and her skills with the horse. Um, it describes her skills as dangerous. And um, you said that forgiveness can feel dangerous, and that really struck a chord with me. And I'm curious as to why forgiveness can feel dangerous inside of us.
Well, because we're still looking, uh, because we can see it as an excuse. We can see it. If I were to forgive them, then I'm saying that they didn't do anything wrong, or that I'm, that I'm giving them an excuse to hurt me again or to do that horrible thing again. And it's not true, but it's how we can feel.
That is how that feels inside of me, that topic, because I was sort of contemplating it. And it does feel like perhaps it opens the door to have difficult interactions again. Maybe I'm not learning the lesson that this person isn't safe, or it does sort of feel like it's dangerously opening a door of protection.
Yeah. It's not, though. It's not actually, because the only protection that we ever need is love, right? And so there's and ultimately there's no one but ourselves in this. So who are we actually forgiving? And we think we're forgiving an act, but true forgiveness is a letting go of our reactivity and our intolerance.
Margaret, I love what you said about responding instead of reacting, and how when we come into our own heart-centered alignment, we're empowering ourselves to then respond. And that forgiveness also is lifting us up in empowerment. We're empowered to release what isn't serving us, come back into the energy of love, come back into alignment with our hearts, and in our interaction with others, choose our response. How am I going to feel? How am I going to respond?
Yes, yes, absolutely. It always comes back to that for me. And that's, like you mentioned it with that bareback rider, it's an incredible amount of practice and skill and muscle building, spiritual muscle building that is required for us to be able to respond instead of react, or to come back and be able to look at ourselves in our own places of intolerance and be able to forgive that in ourselves, to be able to lift that burden off of our own shoulders, because it frees us up to be in love. It frees us up to be the shining lights that we are, right? And so,
And
yes.
you said, it also brings harmony to the system. And I see that as all those interactions with those around us. I
Yeah,
love that. I love that we can choose to bring harmony back into our lives. Yeah.
yeah, through forgiveness. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, Margaret, this is so rich, so rich in what we can do with it and how we can expand our own understanding with it. Yeah. Thank
Mhm.
you for this, Margaret. Wow.
You, thank you. Yeah. this is and it's I think also all of the gene keys and all of the Sabian symbols are these pointers that are leading always to the same thing, right? We always have a choice. We have the choice between fear and love. Which one are we going to choose? And so we could just say that every time.
We'll make really short videos just
Yes,
saying
or love.
that. Incredible conversation today, Margaret. Thank you so much for bringing your wisdom and expertise and learnedness, your knowledge. Incredible.
Stop.
Woo! To our audience, thank you so much for joining us today. And please, if you liked this video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe for more content. We're really trying to gather people together, and raise each other up. Yeah, much love.
Much love.